I never thought a simple glance at a phone could split my life in two. It was a Wednesday night. Nothing unusual. My wife, Monica, had left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered. I wasn't looking for trouble, but something inside me whispered to check it. Maybe it was the way she'd been smiling at her screen lately, or how her hugs had turned into quick taps on my back, like I was some coworker she barely knew. I opened her GPS history, more out of habit than suspicion. But then my chest tightened. Every single day around the same time, there it was. Her car parked for hours at the same address. Not a gym, not a grocery store. My best friend Marcus's house. My throat went dry. I scrolled through the dates, hoping it was some kind of mistake. A glitch. But it wasn't. Weeks of trips, lined up like a row of bullets. The kitchen lights buzzed above me, and I felt the heat rising in my ears. I could smell the faint detergent from her laundry basket, hear the shower running upstairs. The world kept moving, but mine froze. I wasn't ready to think about what they were doing there. I wasn't ready to picture it, but my body already knew the truth. When Monica walked into the kitchen minutes later, hair damp, wearing her robe, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. And for the first time in my life, I had to fake a smile so she wouldn't see the storm in my chest. I decided right then. I wasn't going to explode. Not yet. I was going to watch, listen, and let the truth bury itself. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the map, those little pins marking her trips like scars across a calendar. My wife driving, pulling into Marcus's driveway, stepping out with that same smile she used to give me. The thought dug into my brain, sharp and endless. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. Steady, calm, like nothing in the world could disturb her rest. My chest, though, was tight with fire. The smell of her shampoo drifted from her pillow. Lavender, the same one she'd used since college. It used to comfort me. Now it felt like a knife, twisting with each breath. By morning, I had already decided something. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I needed to know for sure. Not the GPS, not assumptions. I wanted the truth to walk straight into my face, undeniable, so when I spoke, there'd be no escape, no denial, no fake tears. At breakfast, she poured me coffee like she always did, humming under her breath. I watched her, every little move, her hand brushing her hair back, her eyes flicking at her phone when it buzzed on the counter. She didn't notice me studying her, not really. She thought I was just tired. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head, her voice light. "Didn't sleep much," I said, keeping it short. She smiled gently. "Too much work on your mind." That line. That damn line. She said it so easily, like she had a pocket full of excuses for me to believe. And I nodded like a fool, letting her think I was still blind. When she left for work, I followed a few minutes later. But I didn't go to the office. I parked a block from Marcus's street and waited. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned pale. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass, mixed with gasoline from a neighbor's mower, but it couldn't drown out the sour taste in my mouth. An hour passed. My phone buzzed with emails from the job, but I ignored them. My eyes stayed locked on the corner. Then I saw it. Her car. The silver SUV I'd washed myself 100 times, polished until it gleamed. She turned down his street. Slow, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She pulled right into his driveway. I felt my stomach clench. She didn't even hesitate. The front door opened and Marcus stepped out. My best friend since high school. The man who stood beside me at my wedding. He had that same easy grin, the one people always trusted. He leaned in, kissed her cheek. She laughed. Then they disappeared inside. I sat there for what felt like an eternity. The world around me blurred. Kids biked down the street. A dog barked in a yard. The mailman dropped envelopes into boxes. But I was frozen, stuck in that driveway with them, even though my car was a block away. I wanted to storm in. My body screamed for it. To rip the door off its hinges. To drag both of them into the light. But another part of me, colder, sharper, held me back. That part told me to wait. To gather everything. To let them dig their own grave so deep they couldn't climb out. When she finally left, hours later, I didn't follow her. I drove home instead. My hands shook on the steering wheel, Sweat dampened my shirt, but my mind was already setting traps. If they thought they were clever, I'd be smarter. If they thought they were secret, I'd shine a floodlight on their lies. That night, Monica curled against me in bed, her skin warm against mine. "You feel tense," she whispered. "Rough day?" I kissed her forehead, just like always. My voice was calm, steady. "Yeah, just a rough day." But inside, I was already planning tomorrow. By morning, the anger had cooled into something heavier, like a stone in my gut. It didn't burn anymore. It just sat there, weighing every breath. I shaved slow, listening to the rasp of the blade against my cheek, the mirror fogging from the steam. My eyes looked older than yesterday. Same brown irises, but harder, like the pupil itself had learned not to blink. I made eggs, because that's what I do when I need control. Pan on medium, butter just before it smokes. Salt with the pinch, I trust. The sizzle steadied my hands. The smell filled the kitchen, and pushed back the lavender ghost of her shampoo. Monica drifted in wearing a soft gray sweater I'd bought last winter. She kissed my cheek and said, "Smells good." Her voice was bright, the kind of brightness that comes with a dimmer switch hidden in the pocket. "Eat up," I said. She did. She ate like a woman with nothing to hide, like someone immune to consequence. I studied her as she chewed, the way her eyes flicked up when her phone buzzed, the way her thumbs moved quick, like they had muscle memory for lies. She noticed me watching and brushed my wrist. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. I took a bite, let the salt sting my tongue. "Heading in early." "Me too," she said, lifting her mug. "Big day." "Big day." My jaw worked hard on a piece of toast until it nearly cracked. When she left, I cleaned the dishes slow, because slowing down makes room for decisions. I thought about Marcus's porch, the creak of that second plank from the left. I thought about the summer we built his backyard deck, two 20-something idiots with cheap beer and borrowed tools, swearing we'd keep life simple. He was there when I got my first promotion. I held him up when his mother died. The memories crowded my chest like a room full of strangers asking for a chair. I opened my laptop and ordered a small GPS tracker, the kind a parent slides under a teenager's seat. Next day delivery. I also bought a nanny cam disguised as an air freshener. Then I dug a dusty shoebox from the back of my closet, the one with an old point-and-shoot camera, a spare SD card, a receipt for a ring I couldn't afford back then, and a letter from my father. The camera still turned on. The lens whirred like a tired throat clearing itself. Before lunch, I drove to my guy on Maple Avenue, Jesse, a cell repair wizard who thinks privacy is a myth and cash is king. The shop smelled like solder and old plastic. Phones lined the walls like retired soldiers, cracked and waiting. "Yo, D," he said when I stepped in. "Been a minute. Need a favor," I told him. "Two, actually. Can you pull deleted texts from an iCloud backup if I give you the login? And can you mirror a phone's messages to an iPad without the owner noticing?" He squinted, ran his tongue over his teeth. "The first is a maybe. The second's easy if you've got the creds." "I've got them," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. He nodded. "Leave what you got. Come back tomorrow." I handed him a slip of paper with Monica's details and slid cash across the counter. The bills felt damp in my palm. He tucked them away without counting. "You okay?" he asked, eyes softer now. "I'm going to be," I said. Outside, the fall air was crisp, the kind that snaps your lungs awake. I took it in deep and let it scratch my throat clean. I drove aimlessly for a while. Streets I knew so well they almost felt like home. The city sounded alive. Construction clanks, a bus sighing at a stop, somebody's car stereo spilling bass into the afternoon. My mind drifted to my father's letter in that shoebox. He'd written about endurance, about how men in our family didn't quit when things got ugly. He'd written it from a hospital bed, lungs failing, still finding the words to tell me to stand up straight. I could hear his voice like gravel rolling in a jar. At 2 o'clock, I parked a block from Marcus's street again. I didn't plan to. My hands just turned the wheel there, habit pushing me toward the heat. I lowered the seat, kept a baseball cap low, and waited. A delivery truck idled nearby, diesel mingling with the sweet stink of fallen leaves. The wind had a bite, I rubbed my thumbs together, feeling the dry edges of my skin catch. 3:15. Her silver SUV rolled into view like a ritual. She took the turn easy. I could see her profile, the smooth line of her jaw I used to trace with my finger when we were the only two people in the world. She pulled into his driveway. The front door opened before she even cut the engine. Marcus stepped out. He wore a navy hoodie, sleeves pushed up, forearms tanned and casual, like trust. He didn't kiss her this time. He put a hand to her lower back and guided her in like a gentleman who forgot doorways belonged to all of us. My teeth ground so hard my temples throbbed. I lifted the camera, zoomed, clicked. The shutter sounded too loud in my car, but no one turned. I took a photo of the house number, another of her license plate in his driveway, another of them silhouetted in the hall when the door swung wider for a second. Proof comes in small pieces. I collected them like coins. As the hours crawled, I thought about walking up, knocking like a neighbor. I pictured Marcus's face shifting from surprise to guilt. I pictured Monica's hands fidgeting with her sweater hem, those hands that used to know me without asking. Every image tightened the rope in my chest. At 5:30 she came out alone, phone in her hand, face bright with whatever had happened inside. She paused at the porch, typed something with that little curve at the corner of her mouth. I snapped one more shot and slid down in my seat until she turned the corner and disappeared. I didn't follow her. I turned the camera off and let silence fill the car. My fingers smelled like cold metal from the lens. In the rearview mirror, my eyes looked different again, focused, like the fog had burned off. On the way home I stopped at a big box store and grabbed a fresh pack of air fresheners, a duplicate of the nanny cam I'd ordered, just in case. I picked up zip ties, a roll of black electrical tape, and a small toolkit. The cashier asked if I was fixing something. "Yeah," I said. "Something important." At home, Monica was already in the kitchen chopping bell peppers, red and green strips piling up like confetti that didn't know it was at a funeral. The house smelled warm, cumin and onions softening in the pan. She smiled when I walked in. "You're home early." "Traffic was light," I said. She kissed me like a wife in a commercial. "I was thinking fajitas." "Sounds good," I said. I washed my hands at the sink and stared at the window's reflection. The two of us side by side, steam fogging the glass. Our shapes soft and ordinary. The normalcy made my skin itch. Over dinner she talked about a co-worker's birthday, an office prank, a new project. I nodded, dropped in a laugh where it made sense. I could taste the lime on the grilled chicken, the char, the sweetness of caramelized peppers. It felt almost illegal to enjoy food when your life is breaking. After the dishes, she tucked against me on the couch. The TV murmured some crime show where the bad guy always slips up by episode end. Irony sat down beside us and put its feet on the coffee table. "Tomorrow's crazy," she said, voice low. "Might be late?" "How late?" I asked. She shrugged. "Depends on how things go." I looked at her profile, at the woman I chose, at the woman choosing something else. "Be safe," I said. "I will." She laced her fingers with mine and rested our hands on her thigh. Her skin was warm. My palm felt like it belonged to a stranger. When she fell asleep, I slipped out of bed, padded to the garage in socked feet, and opened the SUV's back door. The dome light flashed. I cupped it with my hand until it dimmed. I tucked the air freshener cam into the side pocket, careful with the angle, just high enough to see faces, low enough to pass as clutter. I ran the cable to a slim battery pack and taped it in place. Under the rear bumper I nestled the tracker into a notch near the frame, zip-tied tight, tape over everything. My breath fogged in the cool air. A possum rustled beyond the fence, and the night answered with a dry whisper. I closed the door without a sound and stood there, listening to my heart until it slowed. Inside, the house hummed with the fridge, and the vent, and the lie we both lived under. I slid back into bed. Monica stirred and found my chest with her hand. The old move. She sighed in her sleep, a sound I used to love. I stared into the dark until the shapes made sense. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just watch. I'd record. I'd collect truth like evidence in a case where I was judge, jury, and the only one who still cared about the verdict. And when I finally spoke, I would not raise my voice. I would not beg. I would not even ask why. I would show them. The next morning my world looked normal on the outside. Sunlight cut through the blinds, the smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen, and Monica hummed softly while scrolling her phone. But inside me, every detail was sharper, louder, heavier. I was a man walking on broken glass, pretending not to bleed. She wore a cream blouse, the kind she saved for important meetings, though I knew exactly where she was headed. Her hair was pulled back neat, her earrings small pearls I'd given her on our 10th anniversary. She smiled at me as if nothing had shifted between us, as if she hadn't spent yesterday in another man's house, my best friend's house. "You got plans tonight?" she asked casually, sipping her coffee. "Probably just paperwork," I said, my tone flat, but not suspicious. I'd learned to sand the edges off my words. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and walked out with her laptop bag swinging at her side. The door clicked shut. For a long moment I just stood in the kitchen, listening to the silence she left behind. Then I moved. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the nanny cam feed. It blinked awake, grainy but clear enough. Her car interior filled my screen. The steering wheel, the dash, the faint edge of the passenger seat. Nothing yet. The tracker app showed a dot blinking on our street, waiting for movement. I sat there, heart thudding like a drum line, until her SUV rolled out of the driveway. The dot began to move across the map. My pulse quickened. I followed the route, every turn, every stoplight, until, right on schedule, it landed at Marcus's address. I clenched my jaw. Proof. Hard proof. Still, I needed more. The feed showed her parking, reaching for her phone, fixing her hair in the mirror. A moment later, Marcus appeared in the frame, opening the passenger door with that same easy grin I used to trust. He leaned in, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. My stomach turned, but my hands stayed steady. Click. I screenshotted it. They drove off together, not staying at his house this time. The camera showed them laughing at something on her screen, his hand brushing the console near hers. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I forced myself to breathe slow, to let the evidence build brick by brick. I followed at a distance, careful, 2 cars back whenever I could. The air outside was cool, autumn sharp, the kind that dries your lips. Leaves crunched under tires, and every sound felt magnified in my ears. They pulled into a small diner on the edge of town, the kind with neon signs that buzz even in daylight. I parked across the street, angled just enough to see through the windows. The smell of frying bacon drifted over, making my stomach growl, but hunger was the last thing on my mind. Inside they sat across from each other, leaning in close. She laughed, her hand brushing his wrist on the table. He reached across, fingers covering hers. I snapped photo after photo, each one a nail in the coffin of whatever excuse she might try to spin. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. Body language said it all. The way she tilted her head, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. I remembered that look. I'd given it to her for years. I sat there for almost an hour, the diner's sign buzzing in my ear, the scent of grease and coffee coating the air. My palms itched against the steering wheel. I could have walked in, could have slammed my evidence right on their table. But no, not yet. They weren't done hanging themselves. When they finally left, I let them drive ahead before pulling out. The tracker kept them in sight. They went back to Marcus's house. Her SUV slid into his driveway like it belonged there. They disappeared inside. I didn't follow this time. I didn't need to. I had enough for now. Back home, I uploaded the photos, labeled the files with dates and times. Each one clicked into a folder like a piece of armor. I wasn't rushing into a fight with bare hands. I was building a case, one they couldn't talk their way out of. That evening, Monica walked in with the same smile she'd worn that morning. She set her bag down, kissed me, and said, "Long day." I smiled back. "Yeah, same here." We ate dinner, watched a sitcom, folded laundry. She laughed at a joke, touched my arm, acted like everything was fine. And I matched her word for word, gesture for gesture. But inside, my heart was silent now. Not broken, just quiet. The kind of quiet before a storm. And as I lay in bed beside her, watching her drift into sleep, I made myself a promise. The next move would be mine. And when it came, it would hit like thunder. I woke up before the alarm. That gray hour when the house is quiet enough to hear your own blood move. The ceiling fan clicked on every third rotation, a soft tick like a metronome for dread. Monica slept on her side, facing away from me, the blanket tucked under her chin the way she liked it. I watched the slope of her shoulder and tried to remember the last time I'd studied her without suspicion. The memory didn't come. In the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgled and hissed. I let the mug warm my hands, the heat seeping into my fingers until they stopped trembling. The scent was strong and bitter, the kind that coats the back of your tongue. Outside, a garbage truck moaned down the street, brakes squealing like something wounded. I thought about how everything keeps working, even when it's dented. By 8, I was on Maple, the morning air cool enough to sting my lungs. Jesse's shop looked the same as yesterday. Neon open sign buzzing, finger-smudged glass door, a tray of tiny screws glinting under a desk lamp. He had an iPad on the counter, a fresh screen protector half peeled like a bandage. He nodded at me, chin lifting once. "Got something? Good or bad?" I asked. He shrugged. "Depends what you're ready to see." He slid the iPad over and the messages were right there, blue and gray bubbles that could take a life apart with a few centimeters of pixels. He'd mirrored Monica's account, quiet and clean. No fanfare, just truth. My thumb hovered, then tapped. The thread with Marcus sat near the top. Her contact saved just as M, his as Mark. Cute. Their words were easy, familiar, threaded with inside jokes that used to belong to me. Lunches that ran long, work meetings that might go over. The details were sugarcoating on a knife. One message was a photo from the diner yesterday, her hand on his wrist, his thumb grazing her knuckles. Another was a calendar invite titled Hike, set for Saturday morning, repeating the lie out loud, bold letters on a vanity plan. Underneath, his text, "Pack a bag, I'll have the rest." Her reply, "Can't wait." My chest went tight, like someone had wrapped packing tape around it and yanked. I scrolled further back, to the first day the GPS pin started showing up, and there it was. An apology from Marcus for boundary slippage, her reassurance that it just happened, and from there, the slope was greased. They got bold fast. They timed each meeting to my commute like it was an equation. They wrote about me in shorthand, an obstacle to root around. Not hateful, not cruel, just logistical. That hurt worse than any insult. I'm a man, not a speed bump. Jesse stood quiet, letting me read. He always was good at the silence that makes room. After a while, he rubbed a thumb over a scratch on the counter. "You want the export? PDF? Timestamps? Location stamps?" "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded low and far away. "Everything. Put it on a drive." He nodded and slid a small black USB across the counter. "Already done." I tucked the drive into my jacket pocket and swore I could feel its edges burning through the lining. It was small but heavy, like a stone from a grave you can't put down. Outside, the city warmed, sun climbing, traffic thickening, a siren wailing somewhere out of sight. I drove without music. The silence was loud enough. Every red light felt like a test of patience I had to pass. I parked in front of a place that always held me together when life tried to pull me apart, Carter's Cuts. The bell over the barbershop door jingled, and the smell hit me. Talc, clipper oil, faint aftershave, warm hair. The chairs were full. The banter was easy. An old soul record floated from a speaker, a bass line like a heartbeat. Carter looked up from a fade he was perfecting, chin shiny with a little sweat, eyes sharp and kind. Been a minute," he said. "You on the books?" "I'll wait," I said. My voice came out steady. That surprised me again. I sat and the hum of clippers washed over me, that soft mechanical purr that always makes me feel like the world's workable. On the wall, the mirror threw back a line of men in different stages of weak and worry. A kid practiced his mean face, trying to look older than he was. An older man read the sports page like scripture. All of it felt familiar, like a song only your body remembers. When it was my turn, Carter dusted the chair and gave me that look barbers have, the one that says he sees more than hair. "What you need?" "Low fade. Clean the beard," I said. Then, after a breath, and a steady hand, he smiled without smiling. "That part I got. The cape went around my neck, snug with that little paper collar, and the first pass of the clippers sent a soft rain of hair down my cheek. The sound settled my nerves. Zzzt, zzzt, zzzt. I watched my face take sharper shape in the glass, watched the man in the mirror choose his posture. Carter didn't push, but he opened a door. "You look like you've been carrying something heavy." "Yeah," I said. The word felt honest enough to stand. "It's personal." He nodded, eyes on his craft. "Only advice I ever give without being asked is this. Don't let anger choose your sentences. Anger don't know grammar. You pick your words. Make 'em count." I let that sit. The clippers moved behind my ear, the vibration a small grounding thunder. I could smell the hint of alcohol when he wiped the blade. It stung my skin, clean and sharp. When he finished, he turned me slightly, checked the lines, and tapped my shoulder. "Clean," he said. "You good?" "I will be," I told him. And this time I almost believed myself. Back in the car, I called my coworker and arranged a cover story. I told him I might be out of pocket Saturday for a family thing, asked him to forward anything urgent. Then I called a number from a quiet list I kept for emergencies that had nothing to do with work. A family attorney a friend once recommended when I joked about needing a will. I wasn't filing anything. Not yet. I just wanted information. Rights. Accounts. The shape of a landing if I had to jump. Her voice was crisp and practiced. The tone of someone who lives in the shadow of broken promises. She explained calmly, "The way you talk to someone standing near a cliff." She told me what documents mattered. She told me not to leave the house if I planned to claim residence. She told me to breathe. I spent the afternoon making copies, marriage certificate, mortgage, bank statements, birth certificates. The printer buzzed and spit papers onto the tray, the smell of warm toner like the back room of a print shop. I slid everything into a manila folder and tucked it under the spare tire in my trunk. I posted fraud alerts on my credit, set notifications for big withdrawals. Not because I didn't trust her with money, because I didn't trust anything anymore. At 4, the tracker pinged. Monica's SUV moved, a slow blue dot tracing familiar roads. The nanny cam flickered, then showed her hands on the wheel, nails pale pink, a bracelet I'd bought her tapping the steering column with each turn. She drove to the store, bought hiking snacks, almonds, dried mango, protein bars, a small bottle of sunscreen. I could see the receipt tucked limp in the door pocket. She was planning our end like a picnic. That night, she was gentle, almost attentive, the way people are when they're about to ask the world for permission to lie. Over dinner, she mentioned Saturday casually, like she was testing the table for wobble. I swallowed my bite and wiped my mouth slow. "I might head to Charlotte this weekend," I said, looking her in the eye. "Client wants an in-person. It's silly, but they're paying." She nodded, relief flitting across her face so fast, she probably thought I didn't catch it. "Be safe," she said. "Text me when you get in." "I will." We watched a movie. She rested her head on my shoulder. I felt each breath move through her and tried to remember what it was like when that meant home. When she fell asleep, I listened to the crickets drilling the night outside and the distant hum of the highway. I could taste mint from my toothpaste, could feel the smooth groove of the USB drive digging into the pocket of my sweatpants where I'd forgotten it. I took it out and set it on the nightstand, a quiet, dark shape, patient as a witness. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to throw clothes on the lawn or smash dishes or scream. I was going to be precise. Saturday, I'd be in Charlotte, with a full tank, an extra battery, and a plan. The hike would be their idea. The reveal would be mine. No theatrics, no violence, no words I couldn't take back. Just daylight, truth, and the weight of their choices reflecting in each other's eyes. I lay there and watched the shadow of the ceiling fan glide over the wall, a slow, steady arc. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked twice and then thought better of it. My father's letter flashed in my head. Stand up straight. Not angry, not bowed, just straight. Saturday would come. I was ready to meet it. Saturday came like a storm I'd been tracking all week. I woke up before the sun. The house still wrapped in silence. Monica's breathing was steady beside me, her hair spilling across the pillow. I watched her for a moment, not with tenderness, but with the sharp clarity of a man memorizing the last moments of an illusion. I slid out of bed quietly, padded into the kitchen, and brewed coffee. The bitter steam rose into my face, filling my lungs. Outside, the sky was pale blue with streaks of pink, the kind of morning that makes you want to believe in fresh starts. But I knew better. She came down dressed in hiking gear, black leggings, a fitted jacket, trail shoes. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, her cheeks glowing with that subtle excitement I used to recognize when we planned trips together. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Wish me luck." "Luck," I echoed, watching her pick up her backpack. Almonds, dried mango, protein bars. I already knew. She left at 7:30 sharp. I gave her a 10-minute head start before sliding into my car. The tracker app showed her SUV moving toward the state park 30 miles out. I followed at a distance, never close enough to be obvious. The highway smelled of exhaust and morning dew, the hum of tires against asphalt keeping me focused. By 8:30 I parked at a gas station near the trailhead. From there I could see her SUV already sitting in the lot, dust clinging to its sides. I grabbed my camera, checked the battery, and waited. My hands were steady now, like all the tremors had drained out of me during the week. At 8:40, Marcus's truck rolled in. He hopped out, wearing a flannel shirt, hiking boots, and that same easy grin. He opened her door for her, like some kind of gentleman, and they hugged. Not quick, not casual, long enough for my stomach to twist. Click. I caught it. They slung on backpacks and started toward the trail. I followed at a distance, staying far enough back that branches and turns kept me hidden. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. Leaves crunched under my boots, birds chattered above, and every sound felt like part of the theater for this betrayal. They laughed often, voices carrying back to me on the breeze. At one point she slipped on a rock and he caught her by the waist, steadying her. She leaned into him, hand on his chest, eyes bright. Click. Another shot. I crouched low, heart hammering but body calm. I wasn't chasing them. I wasn't interrupting. I was documenting. Every touch, every glance, every stolen second. Halfway up the trail, they stopped at a clearing with a wide view of the valley below. Monica pulled out snacks, and they sat on a log, close enough that their knees touched. She laughed with her head tilted back, sunlight catching her face. Marcus brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Click. Proof. They didn't see me. They didn't suspect. And the longer I watched, the less I felt like a husband and the more I felt like a detective closing in on his case. After nearly an hour, they packed up and continued. I didn't need to follow them to the peak. I already had what I came for. I circled back down a side path, reached the parking lot first, and waited in my car with tinted windows. An hour later they returned, sweaty and smiling, tossing backpacks into his truck. He leaned in close, kissed her quick but real, and she kissed him back without hesitation. Click. The last nail. They drove off separately. She headed home. He lingered a while, scrolling his phone, then left in the opposite direction. I sat in my car, the camera warm in my hands, the smell of pine still clinging to my jacket. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was certain, and certainty is heavier than grief. Back at home, Monica was already showered, hair damp, lounging in her robe on the couch with a book. She looked up, smiled softly, and said, "How was Charlotte?" I stood in the doorway, studying her. My camera bag weighed against my shoulder like a loaded weapon. "It was exactly what I expected," I said. She nodded, turning a page, not catching the double edge of my words. I walked past her, set the bag down in the office, and stared at the folder of documents tucked under the spare tire in my trunk earlier this week. Everything was in place. Evidence, records, backup. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not tonight. Not when she still thought she was safe. The reveal needed to land hard, once, without wiggle room. I wanted her to see it all. Photos, texts, maps, laid out in front of her like a trial she couldn't appeal. Saturday gave me the last pieces. Now, all I needed was the moment. And it would come. Sunday morning carried a strange calm. The sun streamed through the blinds, dust motes dancing like they were celebrating something I couldn't see. Monica moved around the kitchen in her robe, humming softly, making pancakes. The smell of butter and syrup filled the air, rich and warm. It should have felt like home. It didn't. She set a plate in front of me, kissed my cheek, and sat across the table, fork tapping against her plate like a nervous tick. I studied her. She looked relaxed, but I knew the truth. She was only relaxed because she thought she'd gotten away with it. I cut into the pancakes slowly, the sweetness coating my tongue. My body moved through the motions, but my mind was somewhere else. On the photos in my camera, the texts on that mirrored iPad, the tracker still blinking quietly under her SUV. My case was airtight now. After breakfast, she announced she had errands to run. Grocery store, pharmacy, maybe stop by her sister's. She listed them casually, without eye contact, like she was reading a script. "Need me to come with you?" I asked. She shook her head, smiling. "Nah, you've had a long week. Relax." I nodded, kissed her forehead, and watched her leave. The moment the door shut, I exhaled hard. My chest felt lighter when she wasn't in the house. I grabbed my laptop, pulled up the footage from the nanny cam, and organized everything into folders. Photos, texts, GPS, video. Each folder was packed with proof. I exported them into a clean slideshow, time-stamped, irrefutable. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a weapon, and I had to decide when to use it. I thought about Marcus, my so-called best friend, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, who toasted us with a glass raised high, promising a lifetime of love and loyalty. That same man now sat across diner booths with my wife, hiked with her, touched her face like it was his. The betrayal burned, but beneath it was something colder. Resolve. He wasn't just going to lose me as a friend. He was going to lose everything. By the afternoon, Monica returned, bags in hand, smile in place. She unpacked groceries like nothing had changed, humming again, moving around the kitchen as if this was just another Sunday. I leaned against the doorway, watching her. "You're in a good mood," I said. She glanced up, startled for just a second before she smiled again. "Just glad to get things done." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, productive day." She went on, chatting about her sister's kids, a funny thing that happened at the pharmacy. I let her talk, answering with small sounds, keeping my eyes steady on her. She didn't notice the difference. Or maybe she didn't want to. That night, as we got ready for bed, she laid her phone face down on the nightstand, something she'd started doing weeks ago. My jaw tightened, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to anymore. I had everything. Lying in the dark, I thought about my father again. His words in that letter, "Men in this family don't quit when things get ugly." I wasn't going to quit. But quitting and staying aren't the same thing. Sometimes standing tall means walking away with your head high. I rolled onto my side, staring at her back in the dim light. I imagined what was coming. The look on her face when she saw the evidence. The silence that would swallow her excuses. The weight of knowing she'd been caught. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed slow and steady, like a man waiting for dawn. Tomorrow wasn't the day yet, but soon. Very soon. Monday morning hit like any other, but everything about it felt staged. The alarm buzzed, the shower hissed, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. Monica floated through the motions like an actress rehearsing lines she'd spoken 100 times before. She kissed my cheek on her way out, said she'd be working late, and left. Her SUV disappeared down the street, and the tracker app confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't going to work. She was heading toward Marcus again. I didn't follow this time. I didn't need to. My folders were full, my slideshow ready. All I lacked was the perfect stage for the reveal. I wanted her exposed, stripped of excuses, no space to twist her words. At work, I kept my head down. I filed reports, returned calls, nodded through meetings. But beneath my calm exterior, my mind raced. Every keystroke sounded louder. Every clock tick stretched longer. I felt like a man carrying a live wire under his shirt, humming with potential destruction. At lunch, I sat in my car with the slideshow open on my laptop. I clicked through the photos slowly. Her SUV in his driveway, their hands brushing across diner tables, their faces too close in the hiking trail clearing. And finally, that kiss in the parking lot. Proof in high definition. I let the images wash over me, burning them into memory. I rehearsed the moment in my head. Her in the living room maybe. Me with the laptop open, the screen angled just right. Her eyes darting, her lips trembling, the excuses spilling fast. And me, calm, steady, letting the silence strangle her lies. By 5, I drove home with a plan forming. I would wait until Friday. A weeknight confrontation would give her no escape, no weekend to disappear into errands or hikes. She'd walk into our house expecting dinner, and she'd sit down to her own reckoning. That evening, Monica came home cheerful, humming again, setting her phone face down on the counter. She cooked pasta, poured wine, asked about my day. I answered in short phrases, just enough to keep the mask in place. After dinner, we sat on the couch. She leaned against me, scrolling on her phone, laughing at something she read. My arm rested on the back of the couch, but my eyes stayed fixed on her reflection in the black screen of the turned-off TV. She looked happy, not guilty, not afraid, just happy. That hurt more than anything else, that she could betray me and still look so content in my presence. When she went upstairs to shower, I walked into the office, closed the door, and stared at the manila folder in the drawer. Inside were the documents, the backup USB, the proof that my marriage had already ended even if the ceremony hadn't taken place yet. I thought about Marcus again. I pictured confronting them both at once, maybe even at his house. The thought of standing in his doorway, dropping the evidence at his feet, and watching his smile crumble tempted me. But no, that would be giving him the stage. He didn't deserve it. This confrontation was mine, my house, my terms, my rules. Later, when Monica slid into bed beside me, smelling of soap and lavender, she wrapped her arm around me and whispered, "Good night, baby." I whispered it back, my voice steady. But my mind was elsewhere. On Friday night, on the slideshow, waiting like a loaded weapon, on the moment she'd finally see that I knew everything. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake, listening to the rhythm of her breath, the faint ticking of the clock, and the storm gathering inside me. Friday wasn't far, and when it came, there would be no more pretending. The week crawled. Each day felt like walking through wet cement, every step deliberate, every breath heavy. But Friday inched closer, and with it, the weight on my chest began to turn into something else. Not dread, not fear. Anticipation. Monday night she came home late. Tuesday she claimed a team dinner. Wednesday she said she had to work on reports at Marcus's because he had better software. The lies stacked up like poker chips, casual and rehearsed. But I didn't call them. Not yet. Each excuse was another rope she tied around herself, and I let her keep pulling. By Thursday, I had everything ready. The slideshow had been refined, slides numbered, each piece of evidence framed with dates and times. The texts Jesse recovered were highlighted, the photos enlarged for clarity. I even created a short video reel, GPS pins dropping one by one, synced with the timestamps of her messages. It was cold, clinical, undeniable. At the office, I was quiet. My coworkers assumed I was stressed about deadlines, and I let them. Nobody would guess what was waiting at home. That afternoon, I stepped out for an early lunch, bought a fresh bottle of bourbon, and tucked it into the trunk. Not for celebration, for calm. Friday morning came. The alarm buzzed, the shower ran, and Monica moved through her routine like every other day. She picked out a soft blue dress, kissed me quick, and said she'd probably work late again. "Take your time," I told her, steady. She smiled, relieved, and left. The house was quiet after she drove away. Too quiet. I stood in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen, imagining her face reflected in it tonight. The silence buzzed in my ears like static. I spent the day preparing, not with shouting, not with threats, but with calm precision. I laid out the manila folder, the USB, the laptop. I rehearsed what I would say. Short, sharp sentences. No begging, no open questions she could twist, just facts. I would let the evidence speak. When 5 o'clock rolled around, I poured myself a small glass of bourbon and sat at the dining table. The amber liquid burned smooth, settling in my chest like steady fire. My hands didn't shake. At 6:30, I heard her SUV in the driveway, tires crunching over gravel. Engine shutting off. The door clicked open, and her voice floated in. "Honey, I'm home." I didn't answer. I sat at the table, laptop open, screen glowing faintly. The slideshow rested on the first slide. Her car parked in Marcus's driveway. She walked in, heels clicking, grocery bag in hand. She froze when she saw me sitting there in silence. Her eyes darted to the screen, then back to me. "What's this?" she asked, trying to sound casual. But her voice wavered. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands on the table, and met her eyes. "Sit down." She hesitated. I didn't repeat myself, just held her gaze until she set the bag down and slowly lowered herself into the chair opposite me. I clicked to the next slide. Her car again, a different day, same driveway. Her lips parted. "What are you—" Another click. The diner photo. Her hand on Marcus's wrist. Her face drained of color. Click. The hiking trail. His hand brushing her cheek. Her breath hitched. Click. The kiss in the parking lot. She closed her eyes. A single tear slid down, but I felt nothing. The final slide was the mirrored text thread. Her words, his words. "Can't wait. Pack a bag. Boundary slippage." I let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating. Then I spoke. Voice low, calm, every word sharp. "I know. I've known for weeks. The GPS, the photos, the texts, the lies, all of it." She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand, cutting her off. "Don't insult me with excuses. Don't say it just happened. Don't tell me you still love me. You made your choices. You made them every day." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, her hands trembling in her lap. "Please, let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain," I said. My voice was steady, almost cold. "You and Marcus buried this marriage. All I did was dig it up." The room went silent again. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. She reached across the table, but I didn't move. Her fingers stopped halfway, shaking. Finally, I closed the laptop and slid it aside. "You'll have time to think about what comes next. But understand this. Our story is over." Her sobs broke the quiet, soft and jagged. But I stayed still, watching her crumble. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. That night, I slept in the guest room. Monica cried herself to sleep in ours. I could hear the muffled sobs through the wall, the broken rhythm of her breathing. I didn't go to her. I didn't comfort her. Those days were gone. The guest bed was harder, the sheets colder, but I didn't mind. For the first time in weeks, my head was clear. No more suspicion, no more shadows. I had dragged the truth into the light, and it had scorched everything it touched. Morning came slow. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, pale and unforgiving. I made coffee in silence, the smell filling the kitchen like armor. Monica eventually came downstairs, eyes swollen, hair tied back, messy. She stood in the doorway, staring at me. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I didn't answer right away. I took a sip, let the bitterness coat my tongue, then set the mug down with a soft clink. "Talk," I said. She walked in cautiously, like the floor might give way. "I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. I felt lonely, and Marcus, he was just—" "Stop," I cut her off, voice sharp but calm. "You don't get to use loneliness as an excuse. You had a husband. You had me. And you chose him. Not once, not twice, every day, for months." Her hands trembled. "It didn't mean I stopped loving you." I laughed then, a bitter, hollow sound that startled even me. "You don't love someone and betray them at the same time. That's not love, that's convenience." She flinched, tears welling again. Please don't throw everything away." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "I didn't throw anything away, Monica. You did. With every text, every trip, every lie. I just picked up the pieces and looked at them for what they were." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I let her cry. I'd shed my tears already, alone, in silence, weeks ago when I first saw the GPS history. After a long pause, she whispered through her hands, "What happens now?" I didn't rush my answer. I wanted each word to land. "What happens now is simple. I'll be moving forward without you. The paperwork will follow. You'll have your chance to explain yourself to a judge, but not to me. We're done." Her hands dropped, her face pale, lips trembling. "Please don't. I can fix this. I'll cut him off. You can't fix this," I said firmly. My voice didn't rise, but it hit her harder than a shout would have. "Trust isn't glue. You don't piece it back together once it's shattered. You chose him. Over me. Over us. That choice doesn't rewind." The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. The kitchen clock ticked like a hammer against the wall. She tried to hold my gaze, but her eyes broke away first, staring at the floor. I stood, pushed my chair back slow, and picked up my coffee. "You'll need to figure out where you're staying. I'll give you a week. After that, I want you gone." Her mouth opened in shock. "You're kicking me out?" I met her eyes again, steady. "This house isn't a halfway point between two men. It's my home, and I won't share it with someone who disrespects it." She collapsed into the chair, face in her hands again, sobs racking her body. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, the sound of her crying fading behind me. In the office, I sat at my desk, opened the laptop, and pulled up the slideshow again. I clicked through the photos one last time, not to remind myself of her betrayal, but to remind myself why I couldn't go back. Each image was a shield, each text a wall. My phone buzzed with a new message. It was Marcus. "Brother, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Brother. That word stung worse than the rest. He had lost the right to call me that the moment he touched her. I typed back 2 words. "We're done." Then I blocked his number. I leaned back in my chair, the weight in my chest easing. For the first time in months I felt control. Not of her, not of him, but of myself. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the end of theirs. And my next chapter would start without them. The week that followed was a blur of silence and logistics. Monica tiptoed around the house like a tenant afraid of eviction. She cooked less, spoke less, and slept curled on the far edge of the bed until I finally told her not to. After that, she stayed in the guest room, the same one where I had found temporary peace. At work, I buried myself in tasks. My colleagues joked that I was in the zone, knocking out reports, handling calls with steel precision. They didn't know I was channeling everything, anger, grief, betrayal, into control. At least here, my efforts mattered. Numbers balanced. Problems had solutions. At home, none of that applied. By Wednesday, Monica had packed a few boxes. I came home to find them stacked near the door. Books, clothes, a pair of running shoes she hardly used. She looked up at me when I walked in, her eyes searching mine for something. Mercy, maybe. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while," she said softly. I set my keys down, nodded once. "That's best." Her lips trembled. "Is this really it? After everything we've been through?" I met her gaze, steady. "What we've been through is exactly why it's over. You knew what you were risking, and you still chose him." Tears pooled, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't gentle either. I had no more gentleness left for her. That night, after she left with her boxes, the house was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. No humming in the kitchen, no light footsteps upstairs. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock, and the echo of my own breathing. I poured a glass of bourbon, sat at the dining table, and let the silence sink into my bones. It didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Still, Marcus lingered in my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. He hadn't tried calling again after I blocked him, but I knew he would eventually. The man always hated losing. On Thursday, I got my answer. A mutual friend, Kevin, stopped me in the parking lot at work. "Hey man, I don't know what's going on between you and Marcus," he said carefully, "but he's been running his mouth. Says you overreacted, that you're blowing things out of proportion." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Blowing things out of proportion? He kissed my wife. He slept with her. He lied to my face while sitting at my table." Kevin raised his hands. "I'm not defending him. I'm just saying, he's trying to control the story. You might want to set things straight before people start believing his version." I nodded slowly, the wheels in my head turning. "Thanks, Kev. Appreciate the heads up." That evening, I pulled out the USB again. Not for myself this time, for the truth. I uploaded a handful of photos and screenshots, not all of them, just enough to silence his lies, into a private folder. Then I sent them to Kevin with a short message. If he keeps talking, show them this. I'm not engaging with him, but I won't let him rewrite the story. Kevin replied 5 minutes later. Understood. Consider it handled. I leaned back, exhaling slow. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted truth, and if Marcus couldn't keep his mouth shut, then he'd get it loud and clear. Friday night I sat alone in my living room. The bourbon was untouched this time. Instead I brewed tea, something calmer, something that wouldn't burn. I looked around at the space that was finally mine again. No lies, no hidden texts, no double life running parallel to mine. It still hurt. Of course it did. But underneath the hurt was something else. Peace. My phone buzzed. A message from Monica. I'm sorry. For everything. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment I thought about answering, about telling her how deep the wounds went, how betrayal feels like drowning while smiling for the crowd. But then I locked the phone and set it face down. Some words don't deserve an answer. I went to bed early, the sheets cool and empty. For the first time in months, I slept straight through the night. No GPS maps flashing in my mind, no imagined voices in the dark. Just sleep. Deep, uninterrupted, healing sleep. And when I woke in the morning, the air felt lighter. The storm had passed. The rebuilding had begun. Saturday morning greeted me with sunlight spilling across the floorboards and the sound of nothing but my own footsteps. The house felt different, hollow in places, but not haunted. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, mug warm in my hands, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. Still, there was a wait. Betrayal doesn't just vanish because you name it out loud. It lingers, a dull ache in the ribs. I spent the morning cleaning, wiping counters, vacuuming, boxing up the remnants of Monica's presence. A hairbrush on the bathroom counter, a sweater draped on a chair, the faint lavender scent still clinging to the sheets. I folded everything neatly and set it by the door. My house, my rules. Around noon, I drove out to the park. The same one where I'd followed them. The same trail where I'd hidden in the trees with my camera, documenting the truth. This time, I came alone. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of pine and damp soil. Each step on the gravel path crunched under my boots, steady and deliberate. The trail stretched ahead of me, winding through tall trees, sunlight cutting patterns on the ground. I walked slower than usual, not chasing anyone, not hiding from anyone, just moving forward, 1 foot at a time. At the same clearing where I had once watched Monica laugh in another man's arms, I stopped. The log they'd sat on was still there, worn and weathered. I sat down, resting my elbows on my knees, and let the silence wrap around me. Birds chirped overhead. A woodpecker tapped rhythmically in the distance. The valley spread wide below, endless and open. I pulled out my phone, opened the gallery, and scrolled through the photos. Each one hit like a punch, but softer now. They weren't weapons anymore. They were reminders of what I survived, of what I wouldn't allow again. I deleted them, one by one, then the videos, then the texts. My thumb pressed confirm, and the screen went blank. For weeks, those files had been my shield. Now they were just chains, and I wasn't carrying them anymore. I sat there for another hour, breathing deep, letting the mountain air scrape the last of the bitterness out of my lungs. When I finally stood, I felt lighter, stronger, not healed yet, but healing. On my way back down, my phone buzzed. A message from Kevin. Marcus is quiet now. Guess he got the hint? Good. Let him stew in his own silence. He had lost his friend, his reputation, and eventually, he would lose her too. Betrayal built on lies always collapses. Back home, I cooked myself dinner. Steak seared in butter, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans crisp from the pan. I poured a glass of red wine and ate slowly at the dining table. No distractions. Just me and the food, the smell of charred meat, the warmth of the wine coating my throat. Halfway through the meal, I realized something. I didn't feel lonely. Not tonight. I felt present, solid, whole in a way I hadn't felt in months. After dinner, I stepped onto the porch, the evening air cool against my skin. Neighbors walked their dogs, kids rode bikes. Life moved around me like nothing had happened. And in a way, it hadn't, at least not to the world. The storm was mine alone. But storms pass, and when they do, the air feels cleaner. I sat there until the sky turned dark, watching the stars blink into place. My father's words came back to me again. Men in this family don't quit when things get ugly. I hadn't quit. I had stood up, taken the hits, and refused to crawl. And now, I was still standing. The road ahead wasn't clear yet, but it was mine. Tomorrow I'd wake up in a house that belonged to me again. Tomorrow, I'd keep walking forward. And tomorrow, for the first time in a long time, I'd do it without looking back. Sunday morning I woke to the sound of birds outside my window. No alarm, no tension in my chest, just the steady rhythm of my own breathing. The house was quiet in a way that used to scare me, but now it felt like freedom. I brewed coffee and sat at the dining table staring at the empty chair across from me. That seat used to be hers, and for a moment I pictured her there, smiling, pretending, lying. Then I blinked, and the chair was just wood and fabric again. Nothing more. After breakfast I drove to church. I hadn't been in months, maybe longer. My faith had taken some hits over the years, but something about this week pulled me back. The church sat on a corner lot, brick walls faded by time, stained glass windows glowing as sunlight poured through. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and candle wax. People greeted me with nods and smiles, some surprised to see me. I sat in a pew near the back, shoulders stiff, hands clasped. When the choir began to sing, the harmonies filled the space like a tide rising fast, wrapping me in sound. I didn't know the words anymore, but I felt them. The pastor spoke about storms, about how they strip trees bare, flood streets, knock power out. But when they pass, they leave the ground ready for new growth. I sat there jaw tight, eyes burning. He wasn't talking to me directly, but it felt like he was. When the service ended, a few people stopped to shake my hand. I gave small smiles, polite nods, then walked out into the sunlight. The sky was wide open, blue and endless, and I felt a weight slide off my shoulders. On the drive home, I passed Marcus's street. For a split second, I considered turning down, knocking on his door, looking him in the eye one last time. But what would it change? He knew what he'd done. She knew too. And I had nothing left to prove. I kept driving. Back at home, I spent the afternoon fixing small things I'd ignored for months. Tightened a loose cabinet hinge, replaced a dead light bulb, cleaned out the garage. Simple tasks, but each one made the house feel more mine. Sweat clung to my back. The smell of dust and oil filled my nose, but it felt good. Honest work, with immediate results. Later, I fired up the grill in the backyard. The hiss of flames, the smell of smoke and charred meat rising into the air. It grounded me. I threw on a couple of burgers, cracked open a cold beer, and sat in the fading sunlight. Neighbors waved from across the fence. I waved back. As the evening settled, I found myself scrolling through my phone. Not the gallery, not the evidence. I had deleted all that. This time, I looked at old photos of myself. Vacations, cookouts, birthdays. I studied my own face in those pictures. The ease in my smile, the way I carried myself. That man wasn't gone. He'd just been buried under lies. Now, piece by piece, I was digging him out. I thought about Monica, about Marcus, about the months of deceit that had nearly broken me. And then I thought about tomorrow, about new beginnings, new choices, about the fact that I was still standing, still breathing, still capable of building something better. As the stars came out, I sat in my backyard with another beer, the cool night air brushing against my skin. Crickets chirped in the grass, the faint hum of a distant highway filling the silence. I leaned back in my chair and let it all wash over me. I wasn't done hurting, but I was done being broken. And that mattered more than anything. Monday morning arrived like the closing of a chapter I hadn't realized was already written. The sun pushed through the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of floorboards beneath my feet. No lavender shampoo in the air, no soft humming in the kitchen, no phone buzzing with secrets. Just me. I brewed coffee and stood at the counter sipping slow, tasting the bitterness. For weeks, That bitterness had mirrored my insides. Now it felt different. Less of a wound, more of a reminder. At work, I carried myself lighter. My co-workers noticed. "Man, you look like you dropped 20 pounds, one joked. I smiled because in a way I had. Not from my body, but from my shoulders. The weight of suspicion, of betrayal, of silence. It was gone. That afternoon during my break, I called my attorney. Her voice was calm, efficient, professional. She walked me through the paperwork, told me the timelines, explained what I should expect. I took notes, asked questions, and felt steady the whole time. When we ended the call, I sat back in my car, staring out at the parking lot. A young couple walked past, holding hands, laughing. Their innocence stung, but it didn't break me. I knew now that love wasn't about trust alone. It was about protecting your peace. That evening I stopped at the gym. First time in months. The smell of sweat and iron hit me as soon as I stepped in. The clang of weights, the thump of sneakers on treadmills, the steady rhythm of determination, it pulled me in. I hit the bag hard, gloves smacking leather, each punch releasing something trapped inside me. Sweat poured down my back, stinging my eyes, but I didn't stop. By the time I walked out, muscles burning, lungs raw, I felt alive in a way I hadn't since before the lies began. When I got home, I grilled chicken, steamed broccoli, poured myself water instead of bourbon. I sat at the table with a plate of clean food, eating slow, savoring each bite. It wasn't a feast. It wasn't comfort food. It was fuel. Later I sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Kids played in the street. Neighbors chatted on their lawns. Life moved steady all around me. I thought about Marcus, where he was, what lies he was telling himself, whether Monica still believed in him. None of it mattered anymore. They weren't my story to carry. What mattered was me, the man sitting on this porch, still standing, still breathing, still ready for what came next. I pulled out my father's letter again, the one I'd kept in that shoebox all these years. The paper was worn, the ink faded, but the words were still strong. Men in this family don't quit when things get ugly. I smiled, a real one this time. I hadn't quit. I hadn't folded under the weight of betrayal. I had stood tall, faced the storm, and let the truth do its work. And now, I was still here, stronger, wiser, lighter. As the stars blinked awake in the sky, I leaned back in my chair, the night air cool against my skin. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt ready. Ready to build again. Ready to trust myself. Ready to live. The past was finished, and the future was mine.